this point. Councilmember Elizondo.
Here.
Councilmember Bliss.
Here.
Councilmember Kerner.
Here.
Councilmember Parker.
Here.
And Councilmember Menchow.
Present.
With 6 members of council present, a quorum is declared.
Thank you, Christina. And would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As a reminder, we are live streaming tonight's meeting. If there's anybody here that would like to speak before council, I remind you that I need everybody to come forward and speak to the mic, because if you don't, then we don't capture it over the live streaming. And those that do come forward to speak, especially for residents, just need to state if you're a Fair Oaks Ranch resident or not. We have had people in the past couple of meetings that we've had giving their address. The address is no longer a requirement. All you have to do is state if whether you're a Fair Oaks Ranch resident or not. Citizens to be heard. We had nobody sign up tonight. Is there anybody here that did not get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak as part of citizens to be heard? Okay. And with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Tonight we have 4 items on the consent agenda. First is the approval of the May 12, 2022 City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission Joint Public Hearing Meeting Minutes. Second is the approval of the June 2nd, 2022 Regular City Council Meeting Minutes. Third is the approval of the second reading of an ordinance amending ad valorem tax exemptions on residents' homesteads. And fourth is the approval of the second reading of an ordinance adopting fiscal year 2021-2022 budget amendment for the wastewater treatment plant sludge dewatering project. Is there anybody on any of the council members that would like to remove any of these items from consent to consideration? With that, then I'll go ahead and can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
From Roy. And a second?
I'll second.
From Laura. And all in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. With that, we'll move on to consideration and discussion items. We have one item for consideration and discussion tonight, which is the consideration and the possible action on selecting projects from the City of Fair Oaks Ranch's approved roadway capital improvement plan for participation in the federal aid highway safety improvement program. And we'll hand this off to Grant and Mike for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone, council members, ladies and gentlemen in attendance. At our last presentation in May, we did give an overview of the highway safety improvement program. We covered some of the types of projects that could be eligible, including some targeted improvements based on actual crash data or systemic improvements. During that presentation, we also kind of focused on Ammon Road and the softening of the curbs and the adding of the shoulders. And at the end of that presentation, the takeaway was that the city was interested in pursuing this grant and to also bring back a larger list of projects for consideration. So that's what we're here to do tonight. The list that we're bringing back is based on our approved roadway CIP and a few other projects. And we've also established some criteria that we think you'll find useful in helping to rank these projects and hopefully to select a project to move forward with at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike Garza to go over some of the details.
Good evening, Council. Thank you very much for allowing me to be here today. Obviously, you know me, Mike Garza, your GC. Happy to be here and happy to help out however we can for the community here. So I know not everyone was at the last council meeting. I'm hoping y'all were able to watch it so we don't have to go over a lot of the same information we presented last month. Along those lines, as far as the presentation outline goes, I want to go quickly into the projects that you've asked us to look into, and then decide, the goal would be to decide, you guys decide as council, whether or not you want to pursue any specific projects or project or multiple projects, and how we start the next phase of this process in coordination with TxDOT to get that funding for our community. Grant did a great job of outlining kind of where we're at in the overall process. The last time we presented to you guys, it was kind of the concept: is this something you want to pursue? Are we interested in it? We were told to go back along with staff and work on identifying potential projects and prioritizing them, so you have a list in front of you that we can vote upon. I will say one thing that's very important: until we legally have any sort of agreement in place, this is all kind of essentially a pie in the sky until we actually solidify that. And I guess to showcase that best, I would look at that bottom note at which we're at $2.5 million at this point in time. When we met a month ago, we had $3.6 million available for funding. Since then, TxDOT has informed us that it's down at 2.5, and it could be less tomorrow if we don't make a decision and secure these funds. So I want to just put that out there. Next steps would be, of course, to select the projects and eventually pursue that AFA agreement with TxDOT if you guys prefer to move in that direction. The list here, as Grant mentioned, is that we're looking at our CIP projects. The top 5 to 6 projects are roadway CIP projects. The bottom 4 are our drainage CIP projects, so it's a combination of the two. And real quick, I want to make sure we're on the same page here. When we have any project, no matter what the limits are, if there are roadway or drainage elements that are included in that scope, this program covers it all. You're not going to just fix a road from a safety standpoint and leave drainage issues. You're going to address all of it all at once. So I want to make sure that's clear when you're looking at this presentation. There are some drainage elements, utility elements, other challenges that are incorporated into that overall budget. The projects you can see here, there's Ammon Road, Rolling Acres Trail, Post Oak Trail, and Silver Spur Trail. All those have some element of CIP budget associated with it, and all those we'll discuss a little bit further and try to offset some of those funding categories that we already have in our projected city budget moving forward in our CIPs. As Grant mentioned, there's a targeted approach and a systemic approach. The targeted approach is very much reactionary to issues that you see that we want to mitigate. And this picture here is a good visual of any sort of fatality, suspected serious or minor injury reports, reported accidents that we want to potentially address as a community and make sure it doesn't happen again. That's the point of this program. When you look at these here, a lot of them fall on the Ralph Fair Road corridor, which is a non-system project that we're not talking about today. That would be up to TxDOT. We're focusing specifically on off-system projects that fall within our limits. The first targeted approach that we discussed at length during the last meeting is the Ammon Road Realignment project. This particular job, as you can see on the picture on the right, we would want to extend those limits not just to cover the curves, but to go beyond that within our city limits. Our targeted approach would include widening the roadway, softening those curves so they're not as tight as they are today, providing additional pavement for some refuge, if you will, so you don't go straight into the grass if you come off the roadway, and installing some safety protection, Chevron signage, et cetera. This particular project, as we mentioned, is part of our CIP. The roadway is deteriorating at a very rapid rate, and we're estimating around $4 to $5 million of construction costs at this point in time. When you break down all these numbers on the table here, the main takeaway is that if we were to get participation from the program, we would ask for that 90% value, which is $4.5 million. We know for a fact that $2.5 million is available. The goal would be and I imagine this is a question I'll get later, the goal would be to submit the full application and hope that TxDOT can find additional funding, or that the federal government can provide that gap, fill that gap if it's available, or possibly move money from another fiscal year. But the takeaway tonight is that for sure the 2.5 is what is available. The rest would be a potential and a hope, if you will. One more thing on this slide, and I won't go over all these details on all of them. I just want to have it here in case we have questions. You'll notice on all these tables, you'll see federal participation, state participation, and local participation. The federal is going to cover that 90% construction cost value. We cover the final 10, and then the local participation has the environmental and engineering tasks associated with that we would cover on our end as well. Silver Spur was another targeted project that we looked into. I'm so sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I just have one question. So The part of the project that's on our CIP would just be the reconstruction and the paved shoulders. Is the project that you're proposing also include softening the curves, or that part is not in here, it's just the reconstruction of the road?
Great question. Thank you for asking. And
Okay.
it can be either or. It's really up to what you guys are deciding.
The numbers that you're showing here, does that, it looks like it does include realignment.
Yes, ma'am.
Would it be cheaper if it didn't include that?
That is an option. Yes, ma'am. We still have a lot of the same challenges that I'll go over when we talk about the prioritization. The only challenge that resolves is the right-of-way, but we still have other issues that we can talk about. But yes, to answer your question, we can go either route.
Okay.
If you wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
Silver Spur was another project we looked at, and in this particular instance, because there was a fatal injury or a fatal crash at this location, the qualified mechanisms to try to mitigate those issues are widening the outside shoulder 1 to 4 feet to provide that safety enhancement, pavement markings, chevrons, and because there is a low water crossing in this vicinity, we can also incorporate that within our project at within these limits. One thing I want you to note real quick on this picture, you can see we're showing that this particular section is, I believe it's 1.9 miles long. So it gives us a logical termini before and after, or connecting to our project. At one point, we looked at, could we shorten this, and I'll go over that in a minute, could we shorten this to just the curvature area and try to address that area instead of the full lengths of the project. The full 1.9 mile long segment is shown here for a total estimated cost of $2.9 million. All of that federal participation at the $2 million would fall within that 2.5 that's available to us. We would be responsible for $773,000.
So, Mike,
Yes, sir.
real quick on that one. If we shorten it and just, it sounds like you say, just deal with the plate area where there's the curve, is that going to take care of the low water crossing? In that?
Yes, sir. It is included.
Okay, but I just want, because it sounds like you're giving us a pardon?
Sir?
That what I'm trying to understand, when I looked at a list, and I'm sorry for jumping ahead in the presentation, there's 2 Silver Spur widening projects. One is for, somebody gonna, I sit right under the speaker, so I'm especially susceptible, sorry. There's 2 Silver Spur widening projects, one for 0.6 miles and one for the 1.9. You described this as the 1.9, but if we shorten it, my question is if we just deal with a portion of this 1.9 mile project, would we still be addressing the low water crossing issue?
Yes. So you can see right here on the picture, the low water crossing is here, and that would fall within the 0.6 mile limit. So the answer is yes. We would. Both projects incorporate the low water crossing. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry.
That just confused me more.
So the long, the 1.9 miles obviously has it, and when we shorten it, the low water crossing falls within that limit as
Okay,
well.
so now I'm starting to understand, tell me if I do understand, that the Silver Spur widening 0.6 miles is kind of an option B to Silver Spur widening 1.9 miles.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
Sorry for not clarifying that.
Chesley, do you have something else too?
And like here on the slide, this option that we added, we reduced the limits to the vicinity of the crash, which happens to include that culvert replacement. So that's that low water crossing. So hopefully that both projects would incorporate that. And it very much is an A and a B. Yes, sir. The next project is the Detail Corner and Fair Oaks Parkway Roundabout. This particular project was previously approved by TxDOT and, or not approved, but submitted by the city, approved by TxDOT. We decided as a community not to move forward with it. TxDOT did request that we still bring this back up since it had previous funding associated with it. We've analyzed it, and you'll notice when we get to the prioritization, it's very low on the list, but it's still here in case council wants to discuss it today. It's 100% up to you guys. We don't have to beat a dead horse per se because we've done it numerous times in the past, but it is here as an option. I will say one thing, because it is a roundabout, it actually goes up from 90 to 100% coverage. So that's a slight change, but it is 100% funded. Again, we don't need to discuss all the particular benefits, but just know that that's a potential option that we can pursue if you guys want to go down that road. The next job on the targeted list is, I'm so sorry. This is the table for that roundabout that we've already discussed in the past. The next job, I'm sorry, from there we go to systemic improvements. Systemic improvements are the utilization of proven safety enhancing technology and trying to apply those at various locations within the community. These do not need to have a crash or a safety issue established today. They're just a proactive way of trying to enhance the safety for our community. When we looked at these, we took a close look with staff at if there were any of these that were applicable to our community. A lot of them, for example, safety lighting or illumination, that may not meet the aesthetic goals that we have as a community. A lot of them were not applicable. A lot of them, for example, intersection ahead warning signs, we don't have high enough speed facilities to where those would be applicable for our community. So a lot of these kind of slowly fell off the list, but we did have some systemic improvements that we are recommending. The first one is Rolling Acres Trail. This one has a low water crossing as well. It's within our CIP. You can see here on the map on the right that we would not be taking the entire Rolling Acres Trail facility. We would be working on a portion of it, per se. And what we'd be doing is any part of the systemic improvements allow us to take any roadway that's too narrow to where someone driving and texting moves over a little bit and you worry about that head-on collision. We can widen that out 1 feet, 2 feet, 4 feet, whatever is applicable, whatever fits that particular segment of roadway. And that allows us to add some additional rumble strips, some pavement markings, some, they're not necessarily bike lanes, but you could treat it almost like a bike lane. If someone's on a bike, they can use that outside 4 feet, 3 feet to safely intermingle with traffic. So there's a lot of pros to getting that additional widening brought to the table without necessarily adding capacity per se or anything like that. This particular job, as I mentioned, does have a low water crossing that we're already in the process of working with the consultant on the design for that. And the benefit here is that we're already moving forward with it, and it can be potentially, the funds could be offset with this program. This job is 1.2 miles long. It's a total of $4.8 million in construction. I realize there's a carryover here on the left side where it says 5.6. That should have been 4.8. I apologize about that. It was 5.6 at one point when we were looking at the full limits of that facility, but we brought it back to match our CIP limits. Just wanted to point that out for clarification. The one negative about this job, I'll just say, it's a great project and it does help us out. It's just that it's above and beyond kind of our current scope and budget, right? So we're kind of pulling some of that money from the future CIP plans, into today's budget. So that's one of the things we'll talk about as we prioritize these in a little bit. Post Oak Trail is another job that covers the full limits of the facility. So it does have logical termini. It's the same concept, widening the roadway from a safety standpoint. This job is $2.3 million of estimated construction. This one is on our CIP as well. This particular project, when you break it down, the total estimated cost is $3.1 million, in which we would be responsible for $833,000. The systemic approach of installing Chevron curve treatments is something that we're already doing as a community. If you all recall from previous presentations that Julio and myself have given, we're kind of experimenting a little bit in different parts of town. It's not something we've done across the whole town, but it's something that we feel will enhance safety along some of the curves we have in our community. And this typically averages anywhere from $7,500 per curve to as high as $27,000, depending on the technology we use, right? And that's something that we felt didn't necessarily fall off the list, and it was something we wanted to present to y'all in case it's a small product that you do want to try to systemically implement. Yes, sir.
Question about that, like what criteria would you use to determine whether it made more sense to just have the non-electronic versus the LED type chevrons?
So I've seen these and I've worked on them and I've engineered them all over South Texas. It's really about what the goals are of that local residents. And really the negative you see is when you have the LED flashers, they're great from a safety standpoint, but someone living right there on that corner, seeing those lights flash all day, that can get annoying. So it's really about the context that you're working with, the people that are on that block. If safety is a lot more important than the annoying nature of those lights flashing all night, it's really up to the community at that point to decide. It's kind of the same thing we've done here with our community with the flashing stop signs. Sometimes they help a lot, and sometimes we've gotten complaints in the past. So just got to figure out what's applicable. Key takeaways, I've mentioned this to y'all multiple times. We focus 100% on the health, safety, and welfare of our community. We already have projects that are slated for construction with our city funding down the road with our CIP. If we can use this program to help offset that and help us in the future enhance safety for our community, we 100% are going to recommend that all day. The ranking criteria that we utilized was looking at the dollars first, of course, making sure that it's something that we can incorporate within our budget. We wanted to double check and give precedence to the projects that are already part of our CIP, as I previously discussed. We felt it was important for a project to encompass a begin and end limits that were logical. We don't want to have a roadway where you start out and it's 28 feet wide, and then all of a sudden, 500 feet down the road, you narrow down. We felt like that should get some credit, if you will, from a logical standpoint on the terminus. We obviously want to look at right-of-way, utility, and other rural aesthetic impacts and goals that we have. We don't want to have a project that's going to that will have a lot of challenges and constraints that prevent us from moving forward quickly. We want to make sure that if there are additional funds that need to be pulled, that we can handle that as a community, and we can handle any overages that may come up. So we gave that some precedence in our criteria ranking. And of course, anything over that $2.5 million budget that they currently have set aside, that's a game changer for sure, right? If we have to pull that additional funding out of our plans, we have to make sure that we can provide that accordingly. So here's our summary table that we're asking you all to take a look at and let us know if you want to adjust, or if you have any if you have any ideas you want to add to the table, we can do that. But our goal is to hopefully select a project if you guys are interested. The top of the list is Post Oak Trail, and you see a lot of the checkpoints that are on there. It really meets a lot of the criteria that I just discussed, and it falls within our overall budget of the CIP. The one caveat here is that Post Oak Trail, I believe, was out of the 4 jobs we had, Deeds, Ammon, Rolling Acres, and Post Oak. Post Oak was probably the lowest priority out of those 4. So that is one of the caveats. It is on our CIP, but it was one for, I believe, maybe 3 years out versus today. Silver Spur Widening was next on the list because it was close within our limits. There was some overage, but overall it did hit a lot of the check marks that we were looking for, and that's the 0.6 mile section. Once you extend that out to the 1.9, almost 2 mile section, the cost pushed it way down the list. Rolling Acres Trail was also one that we looked at. It ended up in 6th place because of that $2.3 million overage, and because of some of the X's you see there, like the funding constraints and not having the logical termini. And then I've discussed the Roundabout already because of the right-of-way and environmental and utility constraints that we see. Even though it falls within a technical budget, it's not within our established CIP, so it fell down the list to number 7. And the last one was Ammon Road, and that was primarily due to a lot of the X marks you see there in terms of the right-of-way constraints, the environmental constraints, the issues that we may be running into with utilities, the fact that we know that it is part of the CIP, but that $2.3 million of additional funding that would be needed day one is not something we had planned for. So for all those reasons and all of our discussions with staff, this is kind of our ultimate recommendation for you all to consider today. So we're hoping that we can discuss this, and we'll answer any questions you may have, and the goal is to walk out of here with a game plan and how to move forward if you want to pursue that route. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Sorry. Or anybody else.
Go ahead, Roy.
So, a couple of questions. On page 26, you have listed some CIP projects, and there's 4: Elkhorn Ridge Sidewalk, Battle Intent Sidewalk, Tivoli Way, and Rocking Horse Lane. So those are on our CIP list. So is the thought process on those that those are going to be done regardless, and so, or did they just not rise to the level of for this program?
I just want to make sure I'm on the right page. You're looking at the
Well,
table,
I'm
correct?
referring, there's a,
Oh,
on page 26, there's a list that lists the CIP projects, and then we get to this prioritized list, and those 4 projects do not appear as being ranked on this priority list. And the 2, just to cut to the chase on that list, 2 of those have storm water related issues showing, and so I'm just, kind of trying to get my head around the logic of why those didn't even make cut to get ranked on here. Is it just that they don't qualify for the program?
Yes, sir. So the first one, Deeds Elkhorn, does not qualify at all. It's not narrow enough, and there's nothing within our CIP that would qualify for the systemic or targeted approach. The other locations are sidewalk projects, and the program does not cover sidewalk.
Okay. The last thing is just kind of a comment. I took this matrix and I just expanded it out by 2 columns to say what boxes got checked for safety and stormwater, and looked at the projects that did both. And my comment is that those would tend to, rise closer to the top in my mind because they do address those, low water crossing issues in addition to enhancing the traffic safety. So I mean, the ones that I see do that are the Silver Spur widening, either one of those options A or B, and the Rolling Acres project. So just comment there that
Thank you for that.
those would tend to like rise on my list of priorities because of that hitting.
Yes,
two-
sir. And at one
two
point,
checks.
you'll notice on column, I guess, 3 there on the criteria, we included the roadway CIP specifically, because at one point we were talking about doing both, one, and I appreciate your input, and that does, I agree, it does help to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Yes, sir.
Joe?
Yes, ma'am.
Whoa. Quick question on the ones that are on this list, because I don't have it memorized, where we have problems with access for ambulances. When we have flooding and we have to close the low water crossings, do any of these on here fall into one of those categories that would solve that problem for us on any of these projects?
Rolling Acres.
You got to come up to the mic, sir.
State your name. I'm kidding.
No, not necessarily. You'd have to do Rolling Acres Trail in order to address one of those two. You wouldn't be able to go ahead and Silver Spur would assist because now you can get up through there. And Chief, maybe to help answer this one, because I mean, of course, they're the ones restricted from getting back there. But Silver Spur, the low water crossing, that would help because that would give them access there in the event of a flood. Post Oak Trail or Rolling Acres Trail, there's 2 low water crossings there. If you solved one of those, then that would give them the access there. But you
So
would
the
have to
answer is
address
that yes, and that's for Post Oak Trail and the Silver Spur
for
Whiting.
not Post Oak Trail, for only Rolling Acres Trail.
Rolling
Only addressing
Acres.
Rolling Acres Trail will address those areas. Post Oak Trail does not address it.
And then Silver Spur, which one? Either
Silver
one?
Spur, the .6 will address it, like Mike mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
So
That's all I needed.
So if we were to pick one of the ones, like 5 or 6, for instance, or 7, or 8 for that matter.
I heard you say 7.
I did not say 7. Nice try. Okay, so this will go on until the last day. Okay. So for those, there's excessive costs. So what does that mean? So if we sign up, say, for Rolling Acres Trail, we would then also have to determine an immediate way of funding the 2.3 million, even though we didn't plan to do that for a while?
So by the time the AFA is fully executed, they typically ask you for almost like a payment plan. The best way I can give you a worst case scenario, or it sounds weird to say it, sorry. The worst case scenario is assume that yes, you will have to have the money by this fiscal year, by end of 23 basically. Or I'm sorry, end of fiscal year 22, which would be summer of next year.
So that's a really quick turnaround. So we'd have to decide, so essentially we would be deciding to also sign up for some short-term debt that we'd have to go into. I mean, I don't think we have 2.3 sitting around.
Correct.
Okay.
So the engineering, 100%, and the construction, what we owe on the construction, that 10%, that can be pushed off, but you definitely want to have that before the letting date, which is next year. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
Can I just clarification on that? So budgeted this year, and we would have to have expensed by October of '23. Is that, so we actually have a little over a year.
Yes, and I apologize, there was going to be a gentleman here from TxDOT to answer specific questions like that on the commitments. I will tell you, the minute we make the phone call and say that we're ready to come to the table about XYZ project, there is some flexibility in how we work that out, whether we want to do it tomorrow or whether we work with them on potentially, I don't want to make a promise we can't keep, but there was some discussions with TxDOT that there may be a chance to use fiscal year 24 funds instead. That would greatly change things because that gives us a lot more time. That gives us a whole another year to plan this out. But I hate to say something that doesn't come to fruition. So we need to assume a worst case scenario at this point in time, which to answer your question, yes, I would say October of next year.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Kesley, any?
I had a lot of questions, but I think they're based more on whatever project that we pick. Specifically those in these back 40 that we're all kind of discussing. So some of the things I happen to get calls on are like if we decide to do something, and I think this is an engineering thing from when I talked with Tobin, what happens to all the stone mailboxes that are, if we're going to widen these streets, they're all, half a foot to a foot off the street? Is that something that's included? The reconstruction of those is included in these designs, because I know that for those of us that live back there, those are really important to us.
Yes, ma'am. So when we established these estimates, if we noticed that we counted them and incorporated that.
Okay,
Now,
so those,
it's a best guess from our standpoint. We don't know if someone paid 10,000 or 2,000, but we used an average for those and included it in our estimate.
but the thought is that we would move them and reconstruct them as they are.
If they need to be shifted, yes, that would be, we'd have
Okay.
to. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then I think we kind of hit on this a little bit, but if we have some of the funds already budgeted for a project that we decide to pick in drainage or whatever, those funds would be, I guess, rolled in, and the amount that we owe, we would just pay the difference out of wherever we pulled it from?
I'm sorry, can you restate the question?
So for some of these projects, if we have funds currently budgeted, and the only, I can't think if we do or not positively, but if we already had funds budgeted for a project, can we use those funds and then we would just find the difference between the two? Does that make sense?
An example would be, in some of these cases, we may have already entered design phase
Yeah.
for some of our CIP projects
Okay.
and already funded that.
And that's probably not something I can answer. I would ask Grant or
Yeah.
David maybe. But what I would say, though, is if just knowing and being involved every day on what we're doing with consultants, for example, if we had someone working on detail corn right now and we have budgeted amounts for them to work on that this coming fiscal year, I would imagine that'd be something that we can try to figure out reallocating, but that's not, I can't answer
So
that.
I guess the question is, if you already budgeted this and say we already have entered design, and we've already spent the design funds, let's just go that far, then is this budget that you put together inclusive of what we've already paid, or is that going to be more of an expense?
Okay, I understand. So you're saying if we've already designed it, we pick a project,
Yeah.
does the budget change?
How'd you come
Well,
up with these budget numbers?
It would. So part of our discussions when we get to the table with TxDOT and our essentially negotiations would be, this has already been designed, it's shelf ready, it's ready to go, and they would take that off of the calculation.
Okay, so
'Cause
they
that's
help
ultimately our
you.
responsibility either way, whether we.
Okay, so they came up with these budgets, I guess, with you?
These
Is-
are all drafts that we've developed with if this were just standard, right? We didn't actually look, is this one designed or not? These are just,
Yeah,
the first
I
thing
guess
we-
that was my question. Did we
Sorry.
go as far as to decide that? Okay. And then, in these projects, it seems like in recent projects, we've had a lot of times where we've set a budget, then we've had to come back and change the budget because it's been a lot more than we anticipated, whether it was an increase in cost in labor or whatever it is due to COVID. Are we pretty sure of these numbers, or are we going to come back in 6 months when we actually decide to do the project, and now we're going to have to find another $600,000-$700,000?
yeah, so be completely honest with you, there's a lot of these that we used because the CIP, if you recall, we just presented that to y'all last year. Granted, literally every month, inflation is just going
Yeah.
crazy. Our goal for this meeting, because we had about 2.5 weeks to get this all together, was to put it in front of you, and then the minute you guys decide this is the one we want to do, we definitely want to nail down and get that exact updated cost. So to answer your question, most of these are from 8 months ago, 6 months
Okay.
ago, if that makes sense.
So, yeah, but my concern is that if I approve a project to say I want to go with Rolling Acres Trail, and we can find the 1.7, actually 2.3 million, and then when you nail it down, because these are 8 months old, oh wait, that's actually 3.5 million, and then, oh, we can't fund that, and we go and backstep 20 feet. So
Understood.
that's the
And-
concern
and
I'm
what I
at.
would tell you, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what I would say that what protects us is that until the council actually signs or gives authorization to sign that AFA, you're giving us direction to continue moving forward. That's what we were looking for today. But until that's actually signed, you don't have to sign it, right? We don't
Yeah.
have to sign it as a community if we don't
No,
want to.
I
If-
get that. It's just tough to make a decision based on a funding of a project when I'm going to spend X numbers of dollars, but those are 8 months ago dollars, so I'm trying to figure out, okay, what can we really afford? So what do I want to move forward with if it's not the actual numbers I'm dealing with?
And
that
things
makes
could
sense.
change. unfortunately, things could change tomorrow and things get less expensive. So
Yeah.
I would assume a 10, 15, 20% worst case scenario, but I
Okay.
understand your predicament. So.
Okay, cool. And then I think the last question I have is, in all the projects I see, it's showing widening, and I think you kind of talked about that. So on the widening of the streets, are we doing that? Why would we? I guess why are we including widening on them?
So anytime a roadway is less than 24 feet, you don't have adequate width for two vehicles to pass each other simultaneously. You try to have at least 12 feet. That's kind of a goal
Okay.
in our industry. So anything that's less than 24, if we have a 20-foot roadway, two 10-foot lanes, it qualifies for getting additional pavement to give us a little bit more flexibility to where you can have two vehicles comfortably pass each other. in
So on
opposing
all
directions.
these, not all of them, but I would say I think it's Post Oak, Silver Spur, Rolling Acres, and Ammon maybe. Are we trying to get them to the 24? Are we going past that, or we don't
You can go
know?
up to 28, so that's the max.
So what did we budget?
We did 28, I believe, on all of them, right? Yes, 28.
Okay. And so with all of these, then I guess the only ones that it seems like we might have to acquire would be Ammon.
And the roundabout.
Yeah, I kind of threw the roundabout out. No offense. Okay.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I have a follow-up question. So in our CIP, we had most of these, right, for reconstruction. I could just take Post Oak Trail for that matter. It was on the CIP for reconstruction. If we didn't have all these funds, when we reconstructed it, would we have widened it? I don't think that was in our CIP, was it? It was.
Most times we would have, yes.
Okay, but is the reason why we're focusing on the word widening is because that's the safety thing that is driving the qualification for this?
That's where the majority of the costs are. And now you get the benefit of not just adding on pavement, you get the benefit of reconstructing the entire roadway, fixing drainage issues, reestablishing your base. So there's a lot of benefits besides widening, so I don't want you to
But
get
if
lost
we
in the word
didn't
widening.
widen, we wouldn't have qualified for the money, is that correct?
Yes, that's the
Okay,
approach we're
so
using.
that's why all of a sudden the name has changed from Post Oak Trail reconstruction to
I was
Post Oak Trail
very confused
widening.
by that.
Yeah, I apologize. I should've
Okay,
explained
just
that.
wanted to make sure, I mean, that's a good reason, I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, if we don't widen, there's no project.
Got it, okay, thank you, that's why they all say widening.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hey, Mike, so for all these projects, are there any other requirements that come along with, for use of the funds, other than we have to provide the 10%? Are there any specifications or anything that they put on us as part of the requirements for putting the roadways in, or?
Yes. So if you look at the tables, I can scroll back to one of them. There are a lot of indirect costs that are included. You'll see here, and those are on us to provide. I guess my mouse isn't working, sorry. Yeah, so the engineering and construction is pretty straightforward and simple. Of course, construction phase services and those direct costs are straightforward. It's these items here, these 2.5% that are pretty standard on any project. That would be just us. The best way I can explain it to you is we have our own process on, let's say, a city project, and we handle our own, we meet our own UDC requirements. We have our own, project development methodologies. This would be like going through a TxDOT project. So we have to follow all of their requirements and guidelines and have their, 30, 60, 90 review meetings. I mean, very similar to what we do, but they're a little more stringent. So to answer your question, yes, we would have to abide by as if this were almost like an NPO funded project with federal funds. I mean, that's what it is. So.
But as you laid out each of these projects and you provided the cost basis on that, you called this local funding, or?
Yes, that's that last column. Yes, sir. Local participation.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, that adds up all of these 2.5, 3.5. When we look at the cost structure that you've laid out, for example, on
Yeah, and I can hopefully I can answer your question. So like right here, this Post Oak Trail widening, it's not as simple as saying, okay, 10% of the 2.35 million is 234,000, and the engineering will be handled. We'll pay that. We'll pay a consultant to do that. And as I mentioned to y'all before, we have consultants already on board that can handle these projects. Not us, not as your GEC, it'd be someone else. But these two values are not the end-all be-all, and that's not it. There's additional line items here for other direct and indirect costs that need to be incorporated and paid for on our end.
But the total cost you have down there at 833 is the total.
Of everything.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
I just want to make, to kind of add on to that, any other hidden costs that we might be looking at having to provide for?
It's a great question, sir. Yeah, and if you recall from the last meeting, I did mention if there are any overages, that's on us 100%. And that's your biggest fear factor on the hidden stuff, right? So if you don't have the most accurate estimate, you end up going over by 300,000-400,000, the state's not going to say, here you go, or federal government's not going to say, here you go, it's on us. Trying to think of any other potential hidden cost. I know just the general management of this can be time consuming. It is another layer of not necessarily something that we do on our standard city projects. That is where we've mentioned to staff that we can help out as GEC with some of those questions that may come up. It's not something that's too extravagant. I mean, it's already part of our budget already in supporting you guys, but that would be the only thing I can think of that's not shown here.
It looks like you've done a great job at capturing things. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else that might be hanging out there before we make a decision. So,
So one of our new employees, Jeannie Terrence, is here from TxDOT. She actually ran the program while she was at TxDOT for numerous years. I hate to call you out like this, but is there anything else I'm not thinking of that you have to come up here, Jeannie, sorry.
welcome to Fair Oaks.
I guess just to set your mind at ease, if up until the point that we submit the project for letting, if you find that the cost is way over, you can also adjust the limits, shorten your limits to bring your costs back down. So, I mean, it's free money.
Thank you. Jeannie.
Greg,
Roy.
yeah, so this is kind of a follow-up question to Scott's question. Who is the interface on the federal participation? Is that TxDOT? Are they going to be the people dealing with grant administration between them and the feds versus us?
100%. So
'Cause
they're,
that
they
gets
don't
to
have
like
time.
the back office finance group kind of work effort involved in supporting this kind of a program.
So FHWR, the federal government, they don't have time to work hand in hand with us, so they focus 100% of their energy on the state. They give the state full authority to handle that and be our point of contact.
So
which is why
TxDOT
TxDOT's
is basically forwarding us the proceeds, but they're interacting with the federal government on the administration of the grant, so they're doing all that back-end grant compliance work.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
One last question. So also following up on Scott, so looking at this, let's just assume, let's say we say we want to go forward with Post Oak Trail widening. How would we pay for $833,148? Would that we just budget that for next year's budget? I don't know if Tobin or Scott wanted to answer that.
Yes.
Yes, we just budget it for next year.
Well, we would take a look at what we have left in unallocated funds this year, and then what you may want to budget towards that cause in the upcoming budget.
Okay, so we'll just roll into our budget cycle.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Just quick question, because I wasn't around for the roundabout and everybody's scared and dancing around that, but I'll just go ahead and bring it up. With the new Lemon Creek coming in, is that something that you guys brought up because of, you said something about TxDOT saying, hey, it was already something we thought was a good idea? Or is it the idea that you think because of all the development coming in, it's actually possibly a sound decision? Not to put you on the spot. Thank you, though.
Yes. No, I'm just playing. No. So, yeah, I don't want to get into the whole roundabout discussion.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of history there, but the long story short of it is we saw the benefit, and so does TxDOT from a safety standpoint, that it would bring an opportunity for us as a community from a branding perspective, from a aesthetically pleasing element perspective, from a safety perspective, there's a lot of proof that roundabouts are indeed a good idea to install. And one of the items that we've talked about in the past is if no one wants our traffic flow to increase, but if it ever did and there ever were a need for a traffic signal, that's much more expensive to build and maintain. So there's a lot of reasons that TxDOT's pushing them, and I think that's why they asked us to reconsider it. But I understand, and from previous conversations, that we're not going to move that one up to the top. So
Okay, no, but you don't, I guess the question, so we get a lot of complaints about Dietz Elkhorn having a lot of traffic, and we know that it's one of our major areas, and it's going to get worse with the HEB in Lemon Creek. We know that. We're already getting complaints, and it's not even built. So can't imagine what it's going to be like when the traffic actually hits. So I guess that's my question. Do you think with that influx of traffic, is the idea that we're either going to need to put a light there or solve the traffic issue another way, or we're pretty far away from that in your engineering standpoint?
I think the roundabout would enhance safety and provide us with something that would prevent the need to have to put in a signal in the future. I think there's a lot of reasons to go with that. The issues that we saw with the roundabout in this particular analysis are the right-of-way acquisition, the utility conflicts, the other constraints that within a year, it's pretty hard to plan around and get set for construction. So I think that's why it kind of fell down at the bottom of the list. Yes, ma'am.
I have a quick question following up on that question. Do we have traffic projections coming out of that Lemon Creek project? Like what traffic projections are going to put on the road?
So
Roy's laughing, so I'm assuming that's a yes.
We've done multiple studies in the past. Like I'm sure you recall, we did the Dietz Elkhorn corridor study as GEC, and we've looked at the development on both sides, and there are numerous reasons for concern about traffic increases, about speeding, about other issues, and we do, if you recall, have a plan in our CIP to address the eastern portion from the Parkway over to Ralph Fair Road right in front of us here, and that project has various elements incorporated into it, such as hopefully a shared use path or other modes of transportation, safety improvements. The limits of that do incorporate that intersection. We didn't have anything in there specifically to address the intersection, but that can be something we plan out as part of our normal CIP process moving forward. I hope I answered your question. Sorry. So we, in other words, when we work on the Dietz Elkhorn project, we'll have to look at projections. But I think we all can agree in the room that there was never a game plan to widen or add capacity to Dietz Elkhorn. It's trying to enhance safety, which is pivotal for us. Did I answer your question? I'm so sorry.
Sort of. I just wanted to know if we had those traffic projections from that.
You asked a direct question about the TIA. We did receive the TIA about a month ago, I believe, from the city for the Lemon Creek development, and we saw that there weren't any proposed improvements associated with that would help us, per se. That was a little disappointing, but yeah, it's coming, and there's not much we can do about it. It's outside of our city limits.
Clarification on that.
Yes, sir.
Say you got traffic impact analysis from the city. Do you mean from City of San Antonio?
Correct. Sorry.
So their responsibility ends at Old Fred Road, that four-way stop?
Yeah, so they fall within the city ETJ, so they still have the authority on the TIA.
Yeah, so, yeah, and I understand that. I'm just wondering, did you said they didn't do anything that was going to help us. Does that mean they're planning from that four-way stop at Dietz Elkhorn and Old Fred Road to I-10, and they're not considering any of the impacts and implications further east on Dietz Elkhorn?
Correct. The only improvements that I recall seeing, and I'm not prepared to sit here and discuss the details of that. It's been a while since I read it, but I recall going over it with staff, and the only improvements we saw were, generally speaking, at their driveways, turn lanes into their driveways, maybe a left turn lane here or there, but nothing that would be off system for them that would assist us as a city.
We're straying off the subject a little bit.
Well,
know
it gets back to the roundabout question is all I wanted to do, because you know, at the time, and I think Laura and you and I were on council when that got considered, and so some of the benefits were it kind of functions as a traffic moderating type of device. It's less subject to, you know, the types of impacts that could cause injury. So that was on my question, and I do think I'll bring it up later at the appropriate time of the meeting about what we may want to consider on that, the rest of that. Thank you.
Oh, I thought you had your hand up. Mike, we talked about widening, and we brought up mailboxes. We talked about moving mailboxes. But in widening this, I'm sure it's within the right-of-way that we already have as part of the roadway. Are we expanding the right-of-way when we put a new road or widen a road like that?
No, sir. We considered that something that would typically get a project to fall off the list, if you will, if we needed to acquire additional right-of-way, because it just takes too long, especially for long distances. Ammon Road was the only one that had a right-of-way element per se, because it's the two corners, but that would have been it.
So when we're looking at Rolling Acres or Post Oak Trail,
No additional right-of-way.
and we talked about at 20 feet, taking it out to 24 feet is what we wanted to get to, the minimum, I believe. Is that correct?
Anything less than 24, we can go up to 28.
Okay.
And Jeannie brought up a really great point earlier. If we're designing this project and we see the overage, she mentioned you can shorten limits. We can also value engineer it. We can say instead of going 4 feet on each side, let's do 3 feet, and we just saved ourselves $300,000 or whatever that number could be, right? So we have some flexibility in trying to value engineer. Once we enter the agreement, there is some flexibility in that process.
Okay. And then tonight, what we want to get to is a yes or no. Do we want to pursue this?
Correct.
And if we say yes, then it's what projects are we looking at?
We're hoping for a specific project so that the next time we come up to you, we can give you actual details about an agreement that we hope we will sign, right? So we need to go to TxDOT with an official game plan if they're going to keep entertaining us, or if we're going to say no, and we say no, and they're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, so for example, if we were to say the Post Oak Trail project is something that we're interested, it's number one priority that you have listed here. The cost was, I don't know, back to the city, I can't remember, $833,000.
Yes, yeah.
So question that came up earlier, I think Laura brought up, is we haven't budgeted that money. And so yes, we're interested. We're interested in doing the Post Oak Trail project, but yeah, we haven't gone through the budget process yet to lay out that funding. So we could say, yes, we could commit to this. Is there a point that tied into it, we can't back out? What if we go through the budget process and this does not meet the requirements of what we want to fund for the year, for example?
Yes, so until you officially execute the AFA, this is all handshake agreement type stuff, right? It's a good faith effort. We're hoping we'll get there, but that is the one point where you can't back out once you have an executed agreement with TxDOT or the federal government.
Okay, and so the AFA agreement is up until then, the funding is still on the table for anybody else?
I didn't think it was, but we already lost 1.1 million in the last 3 weeks. So yeah, it's very much something that they're looking for any municipalities within the district to have access, essentially.
Okay,
So it's very much a first come, first serve.
who's first?
Oh, either way, how much
Go
do we
ahead.
have left in ARPA? Sorry, Scott. Can this be used? I guess is the second question.
Right, yeah, I thought I'd be clear tonight. Roughly 1.2 million is left after the allocation of the dewatering press that you approved on consent. And yes, we could use it for.
Joe.
When does this have to be signed? When is the can't turn back date?
I wish I had a detailed schedule I can give you. If we walk out of this meeting with a project and we schedule a meeting and we sit down with them and we get an AFA and y'all sign it, we're good to go. If we delay it any further, it could be gone tomorrow. I don't have an official drop dead date. The goal with TxDOT is as long as they see progress, they will hold that funding, but there's no legal reason that they cannot use that with someone else, if that makes sense, until we have a contract. So I hope I'm answering your question. I'm sorry.
Yep.
It's gonna, sooner the better.
No, I just wanted to, I guess, start a discussion on projects or put a motion out.
Yeah, I think the first, I mean, is it something that we're all interested in?
Yep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. And then, yes, I would say our next step is looking at projects. Prioritize, how about that?
I mean, I could put a motion on the table and then we could talk through that and
Okay.
shoot it down if you want. I move to approve the HSIP funds to be used for the following project, Post Oak Trail widening, and direct staff to move forward with the development of both the project and an advanced funding agreement between TxDOT and the city.
So we have a motion from Laura.
I'll second.
Leslie, a second.
So to speak on my motion, I just think that, one, it's already in our CIP. We already plan to have done it. We were already trying to find ways to fund things in our CIP, so this just makes logical sense to me to do this. I'm very familiar with this road and how horrible it is. So I think the reconstruction and widening would be a good use of it. Now, I do understand Roy's comments about, hey, if we can also somehow do drainage, that would be great. But just looking at that project, I do think that warrants it, and it fits nicely within the money that TxDOT has available for us. So there's a little bit of wiggle room there too, about a 10% wiggle room there, even if costs go up or down. So that's why I propose that.
Okay, so we had a motion and a second. So, I definitely support the Post Oak Trail widening. I'm just wondering if there isn't, an opportunity for a couple of these other things that don't require any, at least per this chart, any outlay of city funds. And so one opportunity that occurs to me that seems, a lot of benefits and not a whole lot of, financial burden is the static chevrons. So I guess, I might make a motion to amend the motion to also include the static chevron project.
What slide were you looking at, Roy?
Well, I'm looking at the chart, the one that's up on the screen there.
Okay.
This chart shows that there's no
Last
outlay by the
page
city
almost.
for that. It's
One.
not on the CIP list, but I think it's an opportunity.
Yep.
So just good point Jeannie brought up on the.
Hold on a second.
Oh,
So we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Scott. Okay, with that,
So sorry. No, just one more point of consideration on the static signs. That may qualify for the G match, which would be 100% covered. And obviously, from a budgeting standpoint, we would have to do some further research on whether that's 1 curve or 10 curves, 20 curves. We'd have to do some work there. So as y'all are discussing that, I think you need to be some flexibility.
But
Sorry.
If I may?
it was 100% funded.
I believe it is G match qualified. To double check. Yeah, it should be. Yeah.
Greg?
Sorry. Yes, sir.
I think in several conversations that we've had, I think Julio, we talked about chevrons, basically just plastering rolling acres and Meadow Creek with chevrons. I think it's kind of falls in with something that we've already discussed in our plan before to go ahead and add this. So it's kind of a value added at this point.
And it's a safety concern.
Safety concern as well.
I don't
go
know
ahead,
which
Laura.
So I can understand. So then we would be proposing to go forward with 2 projects to TxDOT, or would we merge those together in one big super project?
Very confident the safest way to do this would be have 2 separate agreements, so that way one doesn't hold the other one hostage per
Okay.
se, especially if one's very small. But we can work out those details as we move forward, if that's the direction you want to go.
And just to be clear, so even though the chevrons weren't part of our roadway CIP, they are part of our roadway maintenance program, so we would be offsetting something we had already agreed to spend money on anyways. Is that correct? Grant.
Thank you, ma'am. So for the current annual maintenance program, all of those chevrons have already been ordered already.
Okay, so this
And
would be
they're gonna be-
additional, so if we would have tried to do more next year, this would basically have
We
covered.
could pay for it next year, or we could just pay for it out of the annual maintenance, street maintenance budget as well.
Okay.
There's options there.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Chesley.
Oh, so I just wanted to kind of follow up to what Laura said with this Post Oak Trail widening / resurfacing. Some of the biggest complaints I get are Post Oak Trail and the driving. I actually got an email and a couple messages today about how people are concerned with the condition of the street. So it's one of, when we went through DARP, I believe it was one of the ones that we considered we can't even do anything to it. It's pretty much beyond help. So I think, this shows us moving forward and choosing a project and spending those funds on something that's, a safety concern, but as well as, I guess going a little bit further. So I definitely think it should be one of our projects.
Now, we do have, we're in discussion right now on an amendment. So we're really talking about including of the safety signage or chevrons. So is there any other comments or discussion on it? Any comments or questions from anybody here? Okay, then we'll go ahead and take a vote on the amendment to include the chevrons as part of the original motion. And all in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the amendment is approved. So now we have a amended motion on the table to approve the HSFP funding to be used for the following projects, which would be Post Oak Trail, and to include the chevrons needed for safety, and direct staff to move forward with the development of both projects and advance funding agreement between TxDOT and the city.
And
Okay.
it's the static chevrons, right, not the LEDs?
Yes. All right, any other comments on it? So Mike, by approving this tonight, if this is what happens, then it gives you what you need to go forward to start pursuing this, but we're not locked into anything until we receive an AFA.
That is correct, yes, sir.
Okay. Any other discussion from council? Any comments or discussion from anybody here? Okay, we'll take a vote on the amended motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then the amended motion is approved.
Thank you very much, Council.
Yeah, thanks,
Really
Mike.
appreciate it.
Thanks for your
Baseball
patience.
closed tonight.
That was the only consideration item that we had on the agenda for tonight. We do have a presentation for reports from staff. And our city secretary, Christina, is going to talk to us about our schedule for filling our upcoming boards and commissions.
Good evening, council. It's board and commission season again. For the third year in a row, we're going to start our process to select new board and commission members. And just wanted to let you know that looking at this year's terms that are available, there are potentially 12 open positions. We have 1 on the board, Building Codes Board of Appeals, 3 on the CIAC, 4 on MDD, and ZBOA currently has all 7 that switch over every 2 years. But recently, this maybe 2 months ago, we selected 3 new members because of losses, attrition on the board. So this has been a goal to stagger that board. So this is a perfect opportunity if you're willing to move forward with that. Right now, if you look at the schedule on the screen, in order to keep in pace with our previous years, Amanda and I, initially sent out our emailing to our incumbents last Friday. And we are giving them until, oh my goodness, We are giving them until August 10th in order to respond. We will be starting our social media push based upon your approval, and we intend to post the open positions on the city website tomorrow, at least potential open positions, with your approval. Starting from tomorrow until July 21st, which will be 5 weeks, we will be accepting those applications. We'll come to you and give you an update and status on where we are, and that'll give you another 3 whole weeks to hit the streets and try to get more people if that's necessary. Then we will come back to you on August 18th and provide you the information that we have and get your recommendation on how you want to fill those positions. The last couple of years, you've used interviews, so we've populated a time frame in case you still want to do that. And we're looking at August 22nd to September 9th, assuming generally 4 interviews a night. We could have 2 or 3 nights potentially. Then we have September 15th scheduled as the appointment selection night, and orientation and training will start anytime between September 20th to September 23rd. I think that is incorrect. I apologize for that. But the term will start October 1st, and then they'll be joining the boards or commissions that they've been selected to. One thing I did want to comment on, and I neglected to do that, is on the MDD board, 2 of our council members are currently members that will have the ending of their term this year. That will be slightly different, perhaps, depending on how you want to manage that if you do interviews again, or selecting alternate members for that board.
I think last year we did a process where we looked at all council members and all boards and commissions and considered it as a whole.
Considered what, I'm sorry?
Considered it as a whole for all boards and commissions.
Correct, but this time there'll be 2 council members being considered for
Okay.
positions. So just,
what I was saying is all council members on boards and commissions, and we considered that as a whole, didn't we?
well, that was different. That's liaisons.
Okay.
The members on the MDD board are active board members. So they are appointed by resolution.
Okay.
Who's on the MDD besides Laura? Is
Right.
it Rory? Okay.
And normally, there isn't an interview, it's really just a vote on by council at if they wanted us to stay on or if they want somebody new. But again, it's a 2-year term.
Correct.
Twice a month.
But I don't know that we've done that yet, so I wasn't sure exactly how council wanted to address that for council.
I
Yes,
think
sir.
the mayor's right in the sense that, my experience on the council is the mayor kind of looks at his talent pool and tries to allocate people out so everybody's got something they're engaged in, and so it is a little bit different. But the MDD directors from council do have full fiduciary responsibilities on that board, so they do need to be appointed and comply with the statutory requirements.
And we're not liaisons. We're just standing as full independent board members of a different governmental body, so it's more of a responsibility.
Correct. So I just wanted to provide you with this information so you know what was coming up, and confirm that you're okay with us posting the open positions on the website. And then we'll also, I did not mention, we will be pushing out media, social media advertisements requesting applications. Yes, sir.
Just a suggestion, Christina, that or maybe I should just assume that you're going, when you go to the social media thing, the openings on the MDD that you're going to post are for the 2 at-large members rather than the council member openings.
I do believe they have to be council members.
No, 2 have, but you said there was a total of 4
Correct.
on,
Only
on the
2.
MDD, but the ones that are going to be advertised to the public are going to be the 2 at-large
Yes, sir.
positions rather than the 2 council members, since this is kind of a,
Correct.
that's a prerequisite.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, we will advertise it properly.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Just out of curiosity, since you sent out the email to the incumbents, have you got a large response yet so far?
2.
So I know I responded, so
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
one of the 2.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
But they have a while.
okay.
They have until August 10th, but we just wanted to make sure we were providing them enough time. We wanted to make sure we gave them plenty
Okay.
of time. Last
And-
year, it's a little longer than last year.
And I do think that because they are incumbents, we should probably do several encouraging follow-ups or phone calls. Because I know we had run into in the past where they were kind of blindsided because they didn't actually respond, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen.
Lost
Yes,
in the
ma'am.
inbox.
And
Okay.
we generally do reach out multiple times, especially as we're getting closer. It just varies on, and we try different methods as well, not only emails, but telephone calling. But sometimes, especially during the summer, people are on vacation, it's difficult to reach. But we
If
do
there
make
is a
every
way you
attempt.
can get on their agenda for their upcoming meeting between now and then, that might be a good way to say, hey, or at least pop in and tell them, because I know at MDD, we're meeting in July. So
Correct.
we have that face-to-face opportunity there.
The-
I'm not
the-
sure if these other boards are meeting before the date, but maybe they are, and you can pop in.
We will be able to do that, yes, ma'am. Okay,
Else?
so is that, that's okay to move forward with the plan? Okay, wonderful.
And, you used the term like ARPA, and I thought, you know, this is the process that we established, so appreciate that, but I'm assuming, yeah, we want to keep running that process, so we don't need to take any specific action tonight.
No, no, sir. Okay, well, thank you.
Well, that concludes all of the reports we have from staff tonight. We'll move now to the requested announcement. Does any council member have a announcement they'd like to make? Yes, Roy.
Oh, I'm sorry, well, I guess I will make an announcement as long as I already started talking. We've had a very well-received active shooter program that KCC, well, CLIA does, along with some sponsorship by Constable Brian Vaughn and Apache Rifle Works. And we have another one coming up on July 23rd. For anyone that's interested, you can get out there on Facebook and find the link to register for that. It's a very good class and very timely, so.
I have one.
Good.
I just wanted to let staff know that I've heard a lot of really positive chatter and excitement over the 4th of July fireworks. So, good job.
Anybody else? I have 2 announcements to cover tonight. First, we put it out to the council already that on the 13th of July, we're going to have a special meeting. We will be here in this room from 5 to 9 p.m. And the purpose is it's a general planning session to cover our strategic action plan with really covering the pillars and the priorities of our strategic action plan, and an opportunity for council to review it, maybe provide any updates, but really to provide any guidance to staff on as we move forward with the budget process, and any guidance we want as part of those priorities. The second announcement that I have is yesterday we went into Stage 2 Drought Contingency Plan, went into effect yesterday. And I know that over the last 3 or 4 weeks we have hit record temperatures. I think it was the hottest May on record, and we're probably en route to have the hottest June on record also. During this period, our consumption of water has increased. And as a result, several of our water tanks were able to fill to the appropriate levels that they needed to get to, which has driven us really to get to Stage 2. I know that the record heat is impacting our yards. As you drive around right now, you can see that the grass is starting to turn brown. What I'd ask is, and this is reaching out to all the residents of Fair Oaks Ranch, is that we need to abide by the regulations or the requirements that we have in our ordinance and in our Stage 2 drought contingency plan. And one is that we water your yard only once a week and on the designated day that is for your house. And this is one is according to the city ordinance, but also our drought contingency plan. And those watering times are from 8 p.m. until 10 a.m. on your designated day. Also, there is no watering of yards on the weekends. And we ask that you cut back or stop using water for cleaning or power washing any driveways or any sidewalks. Why it comes up today is that we're on the verge of going into Stage 3, and Stage 3 has some pretty significant reductions with it. If we do the right things now and we conserve as much water and we're abiding by the regulations and the requirements that we have, I believe that we can hold off going to Stage 3 for some time. So as part of my announcement today, what I'm really doing is reaching out to all of our residents of Fair Oaks Ranch, asking us to do the right things so that we can conserve as much water as possible and hold us off from going into Stage 3. And Tobin, that's all I have. Did you have any announcements?
Sir.
And is there any items that any council member has that they would like added to a future agenda?
Yeah, I would, if it's possible, and I don't know that I'm not the only one that wants the information, but I would like to get some kind of briefing on what the findings from the traffic impact analysis on the Lemon Creek goes and what exactly, you know, our sense of any things that we may have to be looking to do in response to what they're not going to do.
Anybody else? No, but I'm tracking, or Dan, no requirements to go into executive session tonight. Christina, is there anything else that we need tonight?
Yes, sir.
Shape, Tobin, anything else we need to cover? I have the time now is 7:49, and we are adjourned.